I have spent years studying the engineering of the Japanese cars and talking with mechanics of Toyota and Honda who consider that a motor that spends too much is a motor that is suffering. For that, we are going to break down the 20 secrets of this wisdom. We are going to pass from being simple drivers to becoming masters of the fuel saving. But have care, because once that you understand the physics of the trick number 20, never you will return to turn on your car of the same way. And that is only the beginning, because what you will learn in the position number 11 will change your perception about what your motor really needs for breathe. The start Kizuna and the myth of the warming. During decades, they have taught us that for taking care of a motor, we must turn it on and leave it to rest 10 or 15 minutes before going out, especially in the cold mornings. There is to leave that the oil goes up, they say. In Japan, the engineers laugh of this habit. The technique Kizuna, which means connection, establishes that the best warming for a modern motor of electronic injection occurs in movement, not in idling. The physics is blunt. A motor in idling takes 3 times more in reaching its optimum temperature of operation than a motor that is working under a light load. When you leave the car turned on without moving yourself, the combustion is incomplete due to that the computer enriches the mix in excess. That leftover gasoline not only is wasted, but that it washes the walls of the cylinders, eliminating the protective film of oil and contaminating the crankcase. The first 60 seconds are critical, yes, but only for ensuring that the pressure of oil be stable. After 1 minute, the Japanese driver initiates the march of way soft. At moving yourself, not only you warm the motor, but also the transmission, the differentials and the bearings of the wheels, something that the idling never will be able to do. The technique of the egg under the pedal. The psychology applied to the driving is one of the weapons most powerful of the Japanese. In the schools of driving of Osaka, it is taught a metaphor visual infallible. Imagine that there is a raw egg between your shoe and the pedal of the accelerator. Your objective is to move the vehicle without breaking the shell. This is not only a counsel of softness, it is a lesson about the efficiency volumetric and the control of the butterfly of admission. Each time that you step on the accelerator of way abrupt, the computer of your car detects a demand of load immediate and enters in a mode called enrichment by acceleration. In this state, the relation air fuel becomes rich, injecting up to a 30% more of gasoline of the one that the motor really can burn of way efficient. The master of the Japanese saving does not step on the pedal, he caresses it of way progressive. The physics tells us that the inertia is the greatest enemy of the saving. Overcoming the state of rest of 1.5 tons of metal requires a massive quantity of energy. If you apply that energy of blow, great part is lost in form of heat and friction. At accelerating gradually, you permit that the transmission goes up of gears in the point of least stress, maintaining the revolutions in the zone of greatest torque and least consumption. The idling is the silent killer. There exists a rule of gold in the traffic of Tokyo, the rule of the 5 seconds. If you are going to be stopped by more of 5 seconds, and you do not have an automatic start-stop system, it is more efficient to turn off the motor and return it to turn on than to leave it functioning. Many Western drivers fear that starting the motor consumes more or that it damages the motor of start. The technical reality, approved by mechanics of high level, is that the fuel necessary for a start in hot is equivalent to barely 1 or 2 seconds of idling. To be stopped in a long traffic light, in a traffic jam, or waiting for someone with the motor turned on is the form most pure of inefficiency. An average motor of 2 liters consumes approximately 1 liter of fuel per hour only for maintaining itself turning. In a congested city, it is easy to accumulate 30 minutes of idling per day. Those are 15 liters per month wasted in nothing. In addition, the idling is the state most dirty for a motor. The low temperature of combustion ferments the accumulation of carbon in the valves and dirties the sensor of oxygen. Aerodynamics of urban gorilla. At speeds of city, less of 60 kilometers per hour, lowering the windows is the form most intelligent of cooling down. However, in the moment in which you cross the barrier of the 80 kilometers per hour, the physics of fluids changes the rules of the game. At high speeds, the open windows create an effect of parachute inside the cabin, breaking the laminar flow of the air and increasing drastically the coefficient of drag, CD. In this scenario, the extra effort that the motor must do for overcoming that aerodynamic resistance consumes much more gasoline than the functioning of the compressor of the air conditioning. The trick of Japanese Gorilla consists in understanding this threshold. At high speed, go up the windows and use the air conditioning in a moderate mode. The car will slide through the air with the efficiency of an arrow. But there is an additional secret. Many drivers use the air conditioning in mode exterior air, what obligates the system to cool hot air constantly. The Japanese expert uses the recirculation. At cooling the air that already is cold inside the cabin, the compressor works less time, it couples and decouples with more frequency and reduces the load over the alternator. It is a game of balance between thermodynamics and aerodynamics. The inflation Kizuna, pressure by temperature. A tire with a pressure low in so only 5 pounds can increase the consumption of fuel in a 4%. The physics is simple. Low pressure means a greater footprint of contact and a greater deformation of the band of rolling at turning. This generates a resistance to the rolling massive. It is like trying to pedal a bicycle with the tires deflated in the mud. The Japanese trick Kizuna of inflation is not limited to following the plate of the door, but to understanding the relation between pressure and temperature. The majority of the people measure the pressure when the tires are hot after having driven kilometers. This gives a false reading. The Japanese expert measures the pressure in cold before going out of home and usually inflates 2 or 3 pounds per above of the minimum recommendation of the manufacturer, without exceeding never the maximum of the tire. This small increment reduces the flexion of the side of the tire, diminishes the heat generated and permits that the vehicle rolls with much more inertia. The syndrome of the full trunk. The second law of Newton says that the force is equal to the mass by the acceleration. In terms of gasoline, this means that how much more mass has your car, more force must exert the motor for moving it. In Japan, where the space is a luxury, carrying unnecessary objects in the car is considered a sin of inefficiency. Each 45 kilograms of extra weight increase the consumption of fuel in a 1 or 2%. It seems little, but think in what you carry in the trunk. That box of tools that never you use, the stroller of the baby that already walks, or those liquids of cleaning. It is dead weight that your motor must accelerate and brake thousands of times in each urban journey. In addition, the extra weight affects the suspension and increases the distance of braking. The hypermilers Japanese practice the mechanical minimalism. They only carry the essential. Emptying your trunk of trash is like receiving an immediate discount in each liter of gasoline that you buy. It is one of the form's easiest and fastest of improving the performance without touching a single screw of the motor. In the Japanese culture, there exists the concept of KonMari applied even to the mechanical spaces. It is not about only order, it is about reducing the parasitic load. The physics explains to us that the resistance to the rolling is directly proportional to the weight that gravitates over the axles. When you carry 50 kilos of forgotten objects in the trunk, you are altering the center of gravity and the distribution of weights of the vehicle. This causes that, in each curve, the tires suffer a greater lateral deformation, dissipating energy in form of heat in place of movement. An overloaded trunk generates what the engineers call negative rotational inertia in the ascents. The motor not only must fight against the gravity for elevating the mass of the car, but it must inject an excess of fuel for compensating the sinking of the rear suspension, which worsens the aerodynamics at elevating slightly the nose of the vehicle. Oils of viscosity 0. The old school of the mechanics said, use thick oil for protecting the motor. In the contemporary Japanese engineering, that idea is obsolete. Toyota and Honda are leading the revolution of the oils of ultra-low viscosity, such as the 0W8 or the 0W16. The physics behind of this is the reduction of the loss by pumping and the fluid friction. A thick oil offers resistance to the movement of the pistons and requires more energy of the pump of oil for circulating through the narrow channels of the block. The use of these thin oils permits that the motor turns with an amazing freedom, especially during the starts in cold, which is when more fuel is spent. These lubricants are loaded with additives of advanced polymers that protect the metal even with microscopically thin layers. Passing from an oil 10W40 to a 0W20, if your motor permits it, can improve the economy of fuel in a 3% of immediate way. It is like if the motor stopped running under the water and started running in the air. This only works in motors designed with modern tolerances. However, it does not matter how good be your oil if the brain that controls the mix is blind. Many mechanics of the old school in the West still look with distrust a can of oil. They say that it looks like water and that it will not protect the motor. But in the laboratories of engineering of Shizuoka, the mentality is distinct. The fluid friction is one of the greatest thieves of energy. Imagine that you try to run inside a pool full of honey. That is the effort that your motor does with a thick oil. Now imagine running in pure water. That is the freedom that the zero viscosity grants. The science behind of this is the molecular shearing. The modern oils with grades of ultra-low viscosity are designed with long-chain polymers that become flat under extreme pressure, permitting that the metallic pieces slide with a resistance almost non-existent. This reduces the losses by pumping. The energy that the motor spends simply for moving the lubricant from the crankcase until the cylinder head. The sensor of oxygen, the brain of the saving. The sensor of oxygen or lambda probe is the component that tells to the computer if the mix is being rich or poor. It is the responsible of performing adjustments in real time thousands of times per minute. The problem is that these sensors live in the most hostile environment of the car, the flow of burning exhaust gases. With the time, they cover themselves of soot and deposits of sulfur, what makes them slow. A slow sensor does not send precise signals, what causes that the computer injects more gasoline than the necessary by precaution. A sensor of oxygen in bad state can increase the consumption of fuel in a 20% without even turning on the light of check engine. In Japan, the preventive drivers do not wait till that the sensor fails. They clean it or they replace it each 100,000 kilometers. A cleaning with a specific solvent can eliminate the contamination and return the sight to the computer. It is the difference between shooting blindly and having a telescopic sight of precision. At optimizing the stoichiometry of the combustion, you ensure yourself of that each molecule of fuel is taken advantage to the maximum. The sensor of oxygen, or lambda probe, is the constant watchman of the stoichiometric relation. In an ideal world, the motor mixes 14.7 parts of air by 1 of gasoline. But in the reality, the sensor gets dirty with deposits of silicon and carbon. A lazy sensor does not send an immediate error signal to the computer, but starts to oscillate more slow. In place of adjusting the mix each millisecond, it does it each 10. That delay is where the saving is lost. The Japanese practice the preventive cleaning of this component using ultrasound or dielectric solvents. A clean sensor permits that the ECU, engine control unit, operates in a mode called closed loop of way much more aggressive, cutting the flow of fuel to the minimum necessary for maintaining the combustion without sacrificing the torque. Predictive navigation and vision of tunnel. The brake is, physically speaking, a device that converts the gasoline that already you paid in useless heat through the friction. Each time that you brake unnecessarily, you are wasting the kinetic energy that the motor generated with so much effort. The Japanese driver practices the predictive navigation. His look is not in the car of front, but 3 or 4 cars beyond. If they see a traffic light in red at 500 meters, they stop accelerating immediately and permit that the car rolls by inertia. This is called deceleration fuel cutoff. In the majority of the modern cars, if you release the accelerator while the car is in march, the injectors turn off completely. The motor follows turning by the movement of the wheels, consuming zero fuel. At arriving to the traffic light, often this changes to green before that they have had to stop themselves completely, avoiding having to overcome again the inertia from zero. It is an art of fluidity that requires patience and vision. Not touching the brake is the maximum signal of an efficient driver. The predictive navigation is the art of the management of the kinetic energy. In the physics, the energy is not created nor destroyed, only it transforms. When you accelerate, you transform gasoline in movement. When you brake, you transform that movement in useless heat in the brake pads. The Japanese driver sees the traffic like a current of water. Never he tries to fight against the current, but that he slides through it. At applying the predictive vision of tunnel, you look for the empty space. If you detect that at 300 meters there is a group of cars piling up, you stop accelerating immediately. You enter in the mode of fuel cut by deceleration, DFCO. In this state, the wheels move the motor and the computer turns off the injectors completely. You are advancing at 80 kilometers per hour with a literal consumption of zero. Filters of air of high flow versus filters of paper. A motor is, in essence, a great pump of air. For burning gasoline, it needs an exact quantity of oxygen. If your air filter is dirty or is of bad quality, the motor must perform an extra effort of suction for obtaining the air that it needs. This is known as pressure drop. When the filter is obstructed, the computer compensates the lack of air, adjusting the mix of way inefficient, what increases the consumption. In Japan, it is valued the use of filters of high efficiency. Many enthusiasts opt for filters of high flow that permit a passage of air more free without compromising the filtration of particles. However, even with a standard paper filter, the secret is the frequency of change. Do not wait till that the filter be black. Change it when it starts to lose its original color. A motor that breathes freely is a motor that does not have to work of more. It is the base of all the pyramid of efficiency that we have built until now. Imagine trying to run a marathon breathing through a straw. That is exactly what your motor does with a cheap or saturated air filter. The volumetric efficiency is the capacity of the motor for filling its cylinders with fresh air. If the filter offers resistance, a partial vacuum is created in the intake manifold, what obligates the piston to do an extra effort in its descent stroke. This effort is paid with gasoline. In Japan, it is understood that the air is the invisible fuel. The filters of high efficiency or of high flow reduce the turbulence in the entry of the throttle body. A laminar airflow without swirls permits that the sensor MAF, mass airflow, reads with millimetric precision how much oxygen is entering. This avoids that the computer injects fuel, just in case, a common practice in configurations with restrictive filters. In addition, a colder and denser air achieved through a better breathing permits a more optimized ignition advance. At changing your air filter each 6 months, you are not doing maintenance, you are buying free power and pure efficiency. With the motor breathing like an Olympic athlete, we are ready for entering to the moment where we will reveal the legendary technique that has permitted to the Japanese drivers to humiliate the official factory consumptions. The technique of the pulse and glide, pulse and glide. This is the jewel of the crown of the drivers of Prius in Japan, but what few know is that it can be applied to any vehicle of internal combustion. The physics behind of the pulse and glide is based in the map of brake-specific fuel consumption, BSFC. The gasoline motors are terribly inefficient when they function with the throttle butterfly barely open, low load, since they suffer of great losses by pumping. However, they reach their maximum thermodynamic efficiency when they operate at a 70 or 80% of their load. The technique consists in the following. In place of maintaining a constant speed of 60 km per hour with the foot barely touching the pedal, a state of low efficiency, you perform a pulse accelerating with decision, approximately at 75% of the accelerator, until reaching the 75 km per hour. In that maximum point of efficiency, you release the pedal completely or put the car in neutral point if the conditions of security and the transmission permit it, for initiating the glide or glide. During the glide, the motor consumes the minimum, or nothing if the motor turns off in hybrids, while the car rolls by inertia until lowering to the 55 km per hour. The average of speed follows being of 65 km per hour, but you have passed the half of the time with the motor turned off or in idling and the other half in its zone of maximum efficiency. This cycle takes advantage of the kinetic energy of a way that a cruise of constant speed never could match. It is a technique that requires practice for not breaking the flow of the traffic, but in terms of pure physics, it is the form most effective of doubling the fuel performance. If you master this pulse, you will be sending energy to the wheels only when the motor is in its best moment. We arrive to the technique that separates the fans from the masters of the saving, the pulse and glide. For understanding why it works, we must look at the map of thermal efficiency of a combustion motor. A motor is more efficient when the throttle butterfly is open almost completely, eliminating the losses by pumping. The problem is that if you leave the accelerator to the bottom, you end up hitting against the car of front. The pulse and glide resolves this dilemma. The pulse consists in a firm and decided acceleration, not violent but constant, for carrying the motor to its zone of maximum efficiency, around of the 70% of its load. Once that you reach the desired speed, you release the accelerator completely. You enter in the glide or gliding. In this point, the car moves by pure inertia, taking advantage of the mass that so much it cost us to accelerate. Synchronization of traffic lights, the dance of the city. In the engineering of transport, it is known that stopping a vehicle of 1,500 kilograms and returning it to put in march consumes more energy than maintaining it rolling at 20 kilometers per hour during 3 kilometers. The Japanese call this the dance of the city. The trick consists in the absolute preservation of the kinetic energy. An expert driver never looks at the traffic light that he has in front. He looks at the one that is at 3 blocks of distance. If you see that the traffic light at the distance is in red, the worst that you can do is to maintain the speed for then to brake. The technique consists in adjusting your speed of predictive way. If you know that the traffic light will change to green in 10 seconds, reduce your speed gradually through the motor brake much before of arriving. The objective is to reach the intersection exactly when the traffic light changes, maintaining at least a minimum of movement in the wheels. Overcoming the static friction, putting the car in march from zero requires a peak of fuel injection massive. If you achieve that the car never stops itself completely, that peak disappears. In cities like Tokyo or Kyoto, the drivers calculate the times of the traffic lights with an amazing precision. It is a battle against the inertia. Each time that you touch the brake in the city, you are admitting that you failed in your prediction and you are converting gasoline in heat wasted in the brake discs. In the arteries of Tokyo, the drivers do not see the traffic like an obstacle, but like a fluid in movement. The technique of the green wave is based in the understanding of the static friction. Putting in movement a mass of 1,500 kilograms from zero requires a quantity of energy up to 4 times superior to the necessary for maintaining it rolling at 20 kilometers per hour. When you stop yourself completely, you are wasting all the kinetic energy that already you paid with gasoline. The science of the synchronization implies a peripheral reading of the environment. If the traffic light at 200 meters is in red, the Japanese driver calculates his arrival time so that, at reaching the line, the traffic light already has changed to green and the car of front already be in movement. This is achieved through the adjustment of the residual cruise speed. At avoiding the total detention, you maintain the inertia in the components of the transmission and the bearings. Number 8. The use of additives of molybdenum. Japan is the world leader in the science of the lubricants, and its best-kept secret for the saving is the molybdenum disulfide. At molecular level, the molybdenum acts of a fascinating way. Its molecules are flat plates that slide ones over others with a friction almost zero. When you add an additive of molybdenum of high quality to the oil of your motor, these plates adhere to the metallic surfaces of the cylinders and the pistons, creating a layer of sacrifice. The physics of this is simple. You are reducing the parasitic friction. A conventional motor spends approximately the 15% of its internal energy only in overcoming its own friction. At converting the internal surfaces in something so slippery like the ice over ice, that energy is released for moving the wheels. The Japanese mechanics have demonstrated that the constant use of molybdenum not only reduces the noise of the motor, but that it lowers the temperature of operation and improves the consumption in a range of between the 3 and the 5%. It is a passive saving that works for you in each revolution of the crankshaft. For understanding the impact of the molybdenum disulfide, we must look at the metal under an electronic microscope. By very polished that a cylinder seems, its surface is full of peaks and valleys called asperities. When the piston goes up and down, these asperities crash between themselves, generating heat and resistance. The Japanese molybdenum has a molecular structure of hexagonal sheets that slide ones over others like a wet deck of cards. These sheets deposit themselves in the valleys of the metal, creating a surface virtually flat at atomic level. This reduces the coefficient of friction of a conventional motor in a range of up to the 30% in the zones of critical contact. Management of electrical loads and the alternator. Many people believe that the electricity in the car is free because it comes from the battery. Fatal error. All the electrical energy of your vehicle comes from the alternator, which is moved by the motor through a belt. By the law of Faraday, how much more electrical demand there is, high lights, air conditioning to the maximum, mobile chargers, powerful audio systems, more strong is the magnetic field inside the alternator, and more heavy it becomes for the motor to make it turn. An alternator under maximum load can steal to the motor up to 5 or 6 horsepower. In Japan, the drivers conscious of the efficiency practice a strict management of the load. They do not turn on the fog lights if there is no fog, they do not use the rear thermal defroster more than the strictly necessary, and they avoid charging multiple electronic devices simultaneously. Each watt of electrical power translates directly in milliliters of gasoline burned. At reducing the electrical load, you permit that the alternator turns freely, reducing the parasitic load over the motor. It is an invisible but constant saving. Many people ignore the law of conservation of the energy inside of their own car. The alternator does not turn by magic. It is an electromagnetic generator coupled to the crankshaft. When you turn on the high lights, the thermal defroster, and charge 2 telephones, you are increasing the demand of amperage. According to the law of Lenz, the alternator opposes a magnetic resistance proportional to the current that is extracted from it. In practical terms, the alternator becomes more heavy of turning. The myth of the octane, premium versus regular. This is the trick that the oil companies hate. There exists the generalized belief of that the premium or high-octane gasoline has more energy and will make that your car performs more. The physical reality is that the octane is simply a measure of the resistance to the detonation. If your car was designed by Japanese engineers for functioning with regular gasoline, 95 octanes or less, putting to it high-octane gasoline is, literally, throwing bills through the exhaust. The high-octane gasoline does not burn with more force. Of fact, it burns a bit more slow for avoiding the knocking of connecting rod. If your motor does not have a high compression relation that requires that octane, you will not obtain nor a single kilometer extra of performance. The real saving comes from using exactly the octane that the manual asks. Using a superior octane does not clean the motor nor gives to it more power. It is a costly placebo. The wise driver saves that overprice and invests it in a maintenance of quality. If you put premium gasoline in a motor designed for regular, the combustion is in reality less efficient. This happens because the fuel of high octane has a speed of propagation of flame slightly more slow for controlling the pressure. In a normal motor, this can result in that the combustion ends too late in the stroke of the piston, wasting energy in form of residual heat that goes out by the exhaust. Spark plugs of iridium of Japanese grade. An incomplete combustion is wasted gasoline that goes out by the exhaust in form of unburned hydrocarbons. In Japan, it is considered that the spark plug is the heart of the efficiency. The spark plugs of iridium of high quality, like the ones manufactured by NGK or Denso, have a central electrode extremely fine, sometimes of only 0.4 millimeters. The physics of this is called density of electric field. A finer electrode requires less voltage for jumping the spark and creates a nucleus of flame much more concentrated and powerful. This ensures that the mix of air and gasoline burns a form almost instantaneous and complete. At improving the efficiency of the ignition, the motor produces more torque with the same quantity of fuel. Many drivers notice an immediate improvement in the consumption and in the softness of the idling at changing their old spark plugs for ones of genuine iridium. The adjustment of the sensor of position of the accelerator, TPS. The sensor of position of the accelerator, TPS, is the one that tells to the computer how much you are stepping on the pedal. With the time, these sensors can decalibrate or send signals of noise that make that the computer injects more fuel of the necessary by precaution. The Japanese trick of precision consists in adjusting or cleaning this sensor so that the signal be linear and perfect. In some vehicles more old, it is possible to adjust physically the sensor so that the computer detects an opening of butterfly slightly minor, what tends to impoverish the mix in conditions of cruise, the famous lean burn. This must be done with technical knowledge, but the result is a computer that does not get scared and that maintains the injectors open the minimum time indispensable. It is a fine adjustment that the mechanics of precision in Japan perform for optimizing the consumption in fleets of delivery. The sensor TPS is the interpreter between your intention and the action of the motor. In terms of theory of control, this potentiometer sends a signal of voltage that the ECU uses for calculating the transient enrichment. If the sensor has a slight deviation by wear in its carbon track, it can send a signal of acceleration, when in reality only you maintain a constant pressure. This causes that the injectors maintain themselves in an unnecessarily high duty cycle. Internal decarbonization with hydrogen. The accumulated carbon in the combustion chambers acts like a sponge that absorbs gasoline and ruins the efficiency of the mix. In addition, it reduces the volume of the combustion chamber, causing pre-detonations that obligate the computer to delay the ignition time. What steals power? The Japanese technique of decarbonization by hydrogen consists in introducing gas HHO in the intake while the motor is in march. The hydrogen increases the temperature of the flame locally and disintegrates the deposits of carbon through a chemical reaction, expelling them by the exhaust in form of gas. It is like making an artery cleaning to the motor. At recovering the original volume of the chamber and cleaning the seats of the valves, the compression returns to its levels of factory. The motor recovers its original thermodynamic efficiency and the consumption goes down instantly. It is a procedure of 30 minutes that returns the youth to any motor with more of 100,000 kilometers. The accumulation of carbon is a thermal barrier that ruins the Carnot efficiency of your motor. The deposits in the heads of the pistons create hot spots that initiate the combustion before that the spark jumps, a phenomenon that destroys the performance. The change of mental chip from driver to engineer of efficiency. We reached the summit. The trick number one is not a piece, nor an additive, nor a technique of driving. It is the adoption of the philosophy Kaizen, continuous improvement. In Japan, the driver most respected is not the one who arrives fastest, but the one who arrives with the least expense of resources. This change of mentality implies seeing the instrument panel not as a set of lights, but as a console of data. You must learn to read your car. Feel the vibrations, listen the tone of the motor, observe how the needle of the gasoline reacts to your movements. An engineer of efficiency does not drive of aggressive way because he understands that the aggression is inefficiency. He understands that each time that he accelerates unnecessarily, he is wasting the effort of thousands of people who worked for producing that fuel. When you change your mental chip, all the previous techniques become automatic. You stop fighting against the traffic and you start to flow with it. This change of attitude is what really permits to reach that 50% of saving. It is the respect for the machine, for the environment, and for your own economic effort. It is the path of the warrior of the efficiency. The final trick is the mastery of the Komorebi applied to the asphalt, seeing the light between the shadows of the traffic. A driver with the mental chip of engineer of efficiency does not see obstacles, he sees flows of energy. He becomes an expert in the management of the load of the motor, understanding that each abrupt movement is a defeat in front of the physics. This philosophy carries you to plan your routes not by the distance most short, but by the one that conserves more impulse. The saving of the 50% does not come from a magic piece, but from the sum of 1,000 small decisions, not accelerating when you see that the one of front brakes, taking advantage of the gravity in the descents for loading inertia and understanding that the speed is a resource that is administered, not something that is wasted. This is the secret of the masters in Japan. The machine is an extension of your will, and an efficient will creates an eternal vehicle.